Hey,
afternoon.
good afternoon. Good
Good afternoon.
afternoon. And good afternoon to everyone. My name is Rotarian Sherry, a member of the Rotary Club of Tortola, and I'm here with Inspector Bob, who is in charge of the Family and Juvenile Unit of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. Welcome.
Thank you.
So this month is Peace and Conflict Prevention and Resolution Month, and so we thought that it would be a good opportunity to meet with Inspector Bob to discuss one of the issues that remains prevalent in the BVI, which is domestic violence and gender-based violence. And just to get a feel for where we are, what are some of the challenges, and where we're going.
Sure.
So, Inspector Bob, how long have you been with the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force?
Yes, so good afternoon again, JTV listeners. I've been a police officer for the last, I would say, 27 years. This year is going to make me 28. And I've been around 16 years at the Family and Juvenile Unit. This is the unit that manages, investigates all cases of gender-based violence, such as domestic violence, child abuse, juvenile delinquents, and all form of sexual assaults.
Okay. So what are your current observations right now? What is happening in the territory right now? Do we see an increase or a decrease or stable level of reporting right now?
Yes, so the prevalence of domestic violence, to be specific, I must let you know as the public that is an increase, a dramatic increase in cases of domestic violence that have been reported to the police and other agencies where the police will get involved in those forms of investigation.
Okay. And what do you see as the reason for that spike?
Well, from where I'm sitting, I would say from 2012, when we introduced our new legislation, Domestic Violence Act, and also our national protocol on domestic violence, myself and other stakeholders would have sensitize or educate the public on the awareness of these forms of crimes.
Right.
And from since then, I've seen where the public more engage in coming forward, reporting, and simply because the police and other agencies are more so aware of these type of offenses where we deal with them when they come on a daily basis.
Okay. And for those in the public who don't know the definition of domestic violence or gender-based violence, what does that include? Because some feel it's just when you have a black eye, but there are other forms of violence. So tell us about
That is
that.
correct. So domestic violence is more so of what we call power and control, where persons are more so, and what I'm seeing, intimate relationships, where one person seems to be more dominant over the other. And with that, you're seeing the physical abuse, the psychological abuse, the sexual abuse, and the economic or financial abuse.
Right.
And with all of these contributed to conflicts in relationship. We're
Right.
also seeing within the family where siblings and so forth are involved in all sort of fights, and even the sexual abuse, which we are seeing more increasing in our reporting of incest cases, sexual assaults within the family.
Right. And so this isn't just happening at the adult level. The children are now are being affected. So how do you see that manifesting itself with the children? How does that present itself to you?
Yes, so where children are involved in these sort of homes where these offenses are being committed, they begin to learn what is happening, and we are seeing it more so now played out, especially in the schools, between the age group of 11 and 14,
Right.
where more children have now been more so bullied in a sense where they believe they have that same form of power and control over their classmates.
Right.
And with that, it's begin to manifest itself more so in the public arena and the schools.
Okay. Do you also see it with drug use? Do you see it with self-harm? Do you see it, are there other ways that it manifests itself?
Yes,
Yeah.
there are also cases of children involved in drug possession, and to some extent, they're distributing drugs, selling. We are seeing weapons are being perpetrated. And more now, so that we are getting calls from the schools where weapons in form of knives and to the extent firearms, imitation firearms, are being now reporting to the police so that the police now has to go into the schools and conduct investigations.
So there's a cycle of violence then.
That is
It's
correct.
trickling,
That is
trickling. It's
correct.
not the sole source, but there is a certain element that trickle that there's a cycle of violence, if you
Cycle
will.
of violence, yes.
Yes.
Cycle of violence.
Okay. And there's also a trend of reports of women also being the abusers. And what do you attribute that to?
Well, it's nothing strange there to say that women are also perpetrators. But over the years, we do had problems, especially with males, men, coming forward and report that they've been abused, and they're for a number of reasons. I would say, from where I'm sitting, one of the most main reason I would say is that men do not want to come forward and say they've been beaten or been abused by their partner, especially
Right.
female partners.
Right.
We also have males who, in the same sex relationship, who are also reporting. So, again, persons will say and hear that sometimes the reason why they don't want to report is because the police are not taking them seriously.
Right.
And that used to be a problem for us in the past. But since we have gone forward and prepare a domestic violence policy, a police report domestic violence policy, we are seeing more officers now been taking the step to make sure that whoever, whether a male or female, man or woman, make a report, it must be taken seriously and dealt with as any other reports.
Okay. Very glad to hear that the policies and protocols that were put in place are having an effect. What are your current challenges then? What is your, as you try to help victims who are or let me call them survivors, what are the challenges that you face still?
Well,
The biggest challenges.
we still being challenged, especially by victims, where I will see some victims, quite a few, report will be made to the police, but for some reason, they always a step back. In other words, they don't want to go forward in having their partner or the perpetrators arrested and charged, taken before the court. So we what we will do is have them be referred to other agencies such as Family Support Network,
Right.
that they can get the necessary counseling and help strengthen and empower them so that they can move forward with the cases that we've been seeing. There are other things that contribute. I would say sometimes we have matters before the court, and sometimes it can take a lengthy time, a length of time before we do have a trial,
Right.
simply because the court has so many other things that have been dealing with there, other crimes that have been committed within the BVI. So some of these cases can take, quite a long time before they can finish, a trial can finish. So it was always myself and other agencies that we are proposing to have what we call a family court.
Right.
A family court where we can have these sort of offenses, these type of matters dealt with in that specific court,
Right.
so that these cases can finish, at a good, reasonable time, so that justice can be served, especially for the perpetrators and, sorry, for the victims and families.
Right. So one of the things that comes up often is with the question of why do survivors stay with their abusers? What has been your observation? You would think, you're in a violent situation, you would want to flee from that and stay away from that, but many go back.
Right.
So what causes someone to go back into that potential conflict?
So over the years, my training experience come across victims. These sort of situation is in a shameful embarrassment situation where most times victims believe that if they speak out, that others in the community, their families or their friends, will become aware and to know that they've been abused by their partner. Um, there are lots of other things. Sometimes some of them are dependent on the perpetrator in terms of, their economical lifestyle, so forth. Children are involved, properties are involved, mortgages, loans, etc., and immigration status. So all these things put together sometimes, put a victim in a situation where they do not really want to come forward. If my boyfriend, my husband, and my wife been arrested, who's going to take care of me and my children and my family? I may be shipped back to where I'm coming from, the country where I'm coming from. So to avoid all these things, sometimes they tend not to want to come forward and report these cases.
And in some cases, the victim loves the person who has abused them.
Correct, correct.
It's a complicated discussion.
Complicated, very much, because they are in love, but they don't want to be abused. But they still believe that there are hopes for them to, at some point the abuse will stop.
Right.
But in most cases, it does not. It does not.
So as a police officer, if a victim calls, the published numbers, which we'll discuss later, to say that I've been attacked, they report that they've been attacked. What is a police department required to do? What is the minimum that you are required to do, regardless of whether the victim wants to proceed or not? So
Okay.
a case is reported to you. What happens next?
So by law and by policy, the police is mandated to respond to every report, whether the victim or someone called anonymously. The police is mandated to respond to wherever that report is being committed
Yeah.
or where the offense is being committed. By policy, two or more officers must respond. And there are certain things there that an officer has to do as responding, making sure that they recognize who is the predominant aggressor and also recognize who appears to be the victim and witnesses, separate them, have explanation from both sides. If injuries are involved, that is paramount for police to then take such person to get the necessary medical attention,
Right.
which is crucial. And we will normally sometimes, most times, refer and get other agencies involved, especially where counseling is concerned. We are still at the crossroad where we need to have what we call
Right.
a shelter especially for victims and families. We need such a place so that we can isolate persons when these things happen so that they will not be in the same environment where a crime has been committed.
Right.
So the police is mandated to respond, making sure persons are being protected for their safety. And quick response is one of the things we have been struggling with over the years. And simply sometimes because of lack of resources we have at times where sometimes other crimes are being committed and the police must respond to these type of crimes. And if there are other cases such as domestic violence, we also have to respond.
Right.
So sometimes we may not respond immediately as we would like to, but it's always the force policy for us, quick response to make sure we protect the victim and other persons in the household and the perpetrator as well.
Okay. Um, are there challenges, as far as information sharing are concerned? Sometimes you see stories posted and it varies whether comments are allowed beneath, and you also see sometimes information about who the victim is being leaked, whether deliberately or inadvertently. How does that affect your ability to handle the case and keep the confidence of the survivor that they're not being further victimized, through the process.
So, are you specifically speaking about information from within the organization or from media houses?
Yes, well, the blogs,
Yeah,
the
okay, okay, okay.
news.
Now I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
Yes. So, I always believe the media has a role to play. We need the media. We need the media to expose criminal elements within the territory. But I will also say that the media needs to be more responsible in their reporting. And I say that because we're living in a small territory.
Yes.
Almost everyone knows each other. And if a victim reports some things and then that matter goes before the court and the whole story is there, and you're allowing persons to blog, that's basically the public have a right now to try that case. In other words, they are saying things without facts,
Right.
and sometimes saying things that belittle the persons who are involved, especially the victims, and that get back to him or her, and sometimes they tend to not want to go forward anymore because they have been exposed, re-victimized more than what has actually happened to them.
Right.
So my encouragement is for media houses to be more responsible in their reporting, especially the online ones, to be mindful, not allowing or calling names so that persons can be identified easily.
Okay.
So be aware of these things.
So is there a policy where their comments are supposed to be restricted, or is there that isn't exactly cemented in policy at this time?
Well, uh,
Comments in the comment section as opposed to the story being reported.
okay. So in that same protocol, the National Domestic Violence Protocol, there's a section that speaks to media in terms of their responsibility how they report. Allowing persons to blog, as I said, can be very harmful. There's nothing in law says that they can,
Okay.
but there are policy around it where that is concerned and how they should go about portraying the story so that persons may not be affected directly or indirectly where this case is concerned.
Okay. Can we address some myths?
Yes.
So, a few I'll put to you and let you give your truth or false, and then you can explain further. So, one of the first myths that is out there is that domestic violence, gender-based violence, is about sex versus power. Can you give again examples of the exertion of power beyond sex? Yeah, sex is one, but what are the other types of ways that perpetrators exert their power over a victim?
So first and foremost, that's false. The myth is false. It's nothing more so to do about sex. It's more so to do about the power and the control. The power and the control of in a relationship with one individual over the other. We have seen these sort of played out as physical abuse, where breaking of the skin, injuries to the body, sexual assault, whether it's by rape or any other form of sexual assault, financial abuse, where persons withhold most of the income and not allowing the other one to have a part to play where the income is concerned,
Right.
threats, stalking, all of these are types are characteristic of domestic violence that we are seeing portrayed, especially to victims.
Okay. And another myth is that once the victim is attacked once, that's going to be the end of it. They say sorry, and we can be confident that after they've said sorry, it's never going to happen again. Is that true or?
False, absolutely. Most cases of domestic violence is continuous, especially if there is no one to say, well, okay, it's time for it to stop. If there's no law enforcement involved, if there's no counseling involved, and perpetrators are now empowered to say, listen, no one is listening, no one is paying attention. So this is my perfect opportunity to continue until, as you said, it can escalate to where a person can be seriously injured or, God forbid, can be killed as a result of domestic violence.
Right. Okay. Um, one another accusation is that a lot of false accusations are being tabled, so they're just doing it to get back at the person for some other transgression. Is that
So, you repeat the question again, sorry.
so? There's a high rate of false reporting, so
Okay.
victims are just making it up.
No, that is absolutely false. Absolutely. Most of the cases are consistent. Consistent. There are evidence to prove that domestic violence is perpetrating in the BVI, and most of the cases that we get are reports where the police respond, and there are evidence to prove or to show that there are cases of domestic violence.
Okay. Last one that I'll table with you. There's a perception that domestic violence only happens within a certain demographic. Persons who are financially strapped. Uh, is that the case, or is it found in all aspects of the community?
Absolutely, again, false. Domestic violence happen in all races, color, whatever background, educational background, nationality. Anyone can be victim of domestic violence. Anyone can be perpetrators of domestic violence. There are no face to it. Most times, perpetrators, I would say, behaves in a way that is kind and loving, especially to victims in a public space. But when it is private, then you see the true side of a perpetrator, inflicting assault on their victims or their partners. So whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you live in Eastern, Western, Poslo, McNamara, anywhere domestic violence can be perpetrated because there is no scientific way about it to say, okay, because this person live in a low-lying area, more cases of domestic violence is coming out from there. They live in the hills, so that's cool. Nothing is happening up there.
Right.
It's not so. We are getting reports from everywhere,
Wow.
everywhere within the territory where this is concerned.
Okay. I'd like to shift to. I think we've identified that it exists. It happens in every walk of life. It's not always a neat case. It's complicated and messy sometimes. Solutions. So, what can an organization like Rotary do? What can the members of Rotary do to help you and members of the public who may be going through a case of domestic violence or gender-based violence?
So I'm very happy for that question. It is not just about law enforcement getting involved, arresting perpetrators and taking them before the court. There are other sides to that, especially with victim support is very crucial because, as I said before, a lot of times when you arrested perpetrators, take them away, the victims are now left in isolation. In other words, they have no one to take care of, them,
Right.
to assist them in terms of victim support. So, organization institutions such as Rotary, and there are quite a few more I can talk about, Zonta, Win BVI.
Yes.
We reach out to these organizations for victim support to the victim. There might be a need where counseling is concerned, shelter, food, whatever items can be contributed to victims. We are so glad to know that such an organization can help. So there are times, sometimes people, persons, victim may not want to reach out to the police immediately,
Right.
but they can reach out to organizations such as you guys and speak to you guys about what is happening. And that can help encourage, empowering them so that the law can take its place to assist victims in these sort of situations.
And even before survivor, I say I'm using the term survivor and victim interchangeably. Even before you get to the point where someone reports that they're being abused, are there warning signs that we as a public can look for as telltale signs that something is going on and that we may want to ask a question or seek help for the individual.
Yes. So most of the time, especially victims, you can see them most times isolated. In other words, you have a friend and she's living with someone, and there's certain times you may not see her, which you think she should be, be seen, whether in the public or on the job. And for some reason, perpetrators use those sort of tactics where they keep victims away, most of from families and friends, in terms of not communicating because they don't want what is happening to be reported.
Right.
So they sort of isolate these victims so that no one knows what is actually happening.
Right.
You at your job, and every minute you're getting a phone call checking up on you. How was your day? But you're working, and they
Right.
know that you're working,
Right.
but they're calling, checking up on you, asking you how was your day, who called you, who you met today, and so forth. All these are warning are indicators to know that someone is in a domestic violence relationship.
Right.
So we have to pay keen attention to these things, making sure we look out for each other, not just who you know, but
Right.
for each other,
Right.
so that we can, you know, take the necessary steps to help the victims who are in these sort of relationships.
And if in the middle of the night or at any time of the day, I guess, you hear the screams or a sign of confrontation, violence being perpetrated, who can we call? What are the numbers, and which department should we call immediately to get an immediate
So
response?
number one department is the police, because the police is the only agency who can immediately cause some form of protection or safety for victims. So you can reach out to the police by calling the police non-emergency line 311, which will always be answered 99% of the time, and they will dispatch officers to the scene to make sure checked out what is happening if it's in your neighborhood.
Right.
As you said, you're hearing some unusual arguments or screaming. That is should be a concern for you as a citizen, to make sure everything is over there, is happening, and make sure the police have it checked out.
Okay. And certainly don't assume that someone else has called. So the police don't mind that 10 persons have called for the same incident.
Right,
If
right,
everyone assumes that everyone else has done it,
correct.
then a call may not be made. So call
Call,
if you
just
hear.
call, just
Okay.
call. So if you called, the police, as I said, is mandated to respond, and someone else called, it's the same answers are gonna get. We have just got a call, and police being dispatched
Okay.
to make sure we checked out what is happening there.
Okay. And as a person who may have been attacked, what is the key piece of advice that you would give to them? What is the one thing that they should make sure that they do to help their case if one is actually brought?
So cooperation with law enforcement in terms of saying what has actually happened. Give a statement. A statement is important so that the information will be documented, so that if a crime such as injuries to someone's body has been committed, that matter will be put forward before the court. The perpetrator will be arrested and possibly charged and taken before the court. So your cooperation is important, because I have seen over the years where lack of cooperation with the police, and it repeated over a period of time. And every time the police respond, it's like the lack of cooperation is not there, and it's not helpful to you, and especially where families are involved. So you always want to cooperate with law enforcement and the other agencies that has to be involved along the way.
Okay. And then on the flip side, a definite no to what action, what shouldn't they do in response to being attacked.
Um, Repeat, yeah.
So in other words, so
Yes,
we know what they should do: cooperate with you, take pictures, to
yes.
document. Is there something that people do that compromises your case?
Okay, right. So I've seen over the years where sometimes victims destroy evidence at the
Okay.
scene, They cover up evidence. They're not telling the truth. They tell lies to the police, and even have sometimes the children to lie to say this did not happen, daddy did not hit me, mommy did not hit me. I remember some years ago, because of one child who was in the home, were able to find a firearm which was hidden behind the house.
Right.
And the victim, who was the mother, did not tell the police anything of that sort, but were able to find that firearm because of one of the child that was in the house.
Right.
And that was something would have helped the police with other cases that we have before us. So it's important, as I said, to cooperate, give us all the necessary information, because it is our job to help you, to assist you to get out of that violent situation. So I will encourage persons, as I said, to cooperate. If they don't want to talk to the police immediately, but you can say it to other agencies as family support network, social development. You know, you can even have go before the Supreme Court and have what we call a protection order to protect you when this order being violated. Then you can call the police so that the perpetrator can be arrested.
Okay. And final question, the role of counseling. So, yes, we will encourage persons who've been attacked to seek counseling, and there are many avenues for that, and there's funding that's provided by certain organizations. What about the counseling for the perpetrator? So, what is required there, or what is available to them
Yes.
to get them the help that they need as well?
So once such person has been arrested, charged, and taken before the court, the magistrate has the power to send you as the perpetrator for a 16 weeks, what we call a partnership for peace program, where different persons will then do different presentation. So it's for 16 weeks. So you go through that cycle of counseling in that 16 weeks program, and at the end, the director will then write a report to the magistrate to say whether or not, if you are qualified, or you are now, in a stage where he's satisfied that you're not going to be a continuous perpetrator. The time has come now for you to get some sort of leniency, if the court so desire.
Right.
So counseling is also there for perpetrators, and you can even self-check in without even the magistrate send you there.
Right.
You can check in yourself and say, I need counseling because there are things that have been going on with me and my spouse, my girlfriend, my wife, or my husband, and I need the necessary counseling. So it's not all the time the magistrate have to send you
Right.
directly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Understood. Inspector Bobb, thank you very much. A lot of very useful information, and we look forward to working with you to help survivors and perpetrators get the help that they
Yes.
need. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
Sure.
Thank you.